Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, and today we have 5 outstanding budget knives, at least in my opinion. We're going to get to it so we don't last 30 minutes. First up, we have the brand new Cjrb Shale, and they have other variations if you don't want this super loud Tiffany blue G10 and the orange. You do have good texture though from this peel ply section right here, and this thing is nice and lightweight. It's coming in at 2.8 ounces, so very easy to carry. It has a crossbar lock, so it is completely ambidextrous because of the pocket clip being able to be swapped over. And of course, it has a very, very snappy action. They have a very well-tuned crossbar lock. The tension on those Omega springs is pretty much perfect. I mean, very comfortable. Those thumb studs are easy to access. No matter what side you're on, it works great. So you have a clip point blade there. So you're going to have a pretty high belly going on this one. And this particular one has a black finish on it. You even have a little ramp with some decent jimping right there. I call it moderate traction jimping. And you have a good overall EDC size at 7.31 inches, 3.16 inch blade of RPM 9 stainless steel. It came ridiculously sharp from factory, and this knife performs so very well. And besides the incredibly sharp edge from factory, I think the blade geometry played a huge part in this one. It has nice and thin blade stock thickness at 0.10, and I've found with all the Kaisers that have the thin blade stock and the pretty good geometry as far as how thin they get behind the edge, I find all those perform outstanding. I really wish we would see more companies that make folding knives give us that at least 0.10 stock. And they had that thin blade stock, and being that you have a high flat grind on this one, they managed to get it down to around 18 thousandths behind the edge. So it sliced so well. As far as the 5 knives that you're going to see today, the Shale performed the second best out of all 5 of the knives, and they all performed really well. So let's go over what's great about this knife. Like we said, excellent performer, great geometry, and incredibly sharp out of box. Nice and lightweight, completely ambidextrous. And for me, the ergos I thought were really good for having flat scales instead of contoured. Quick size comparison, it's identical to the Cjrb Hectare, and it's a little bit bigger than the Ontario Rat Model 2. Now, my nitpicks and complaints, I wish they would have given us more of a sharpening choil because it's already starting to widen back here. And I wish they would have inset that clip into the G10 frame. However, this knife's only $50. Do I think it's worth it? Absolutely. It's a good performer. It's got great action. It was comfortable, and it was very slicey at that, especially for having the thinner blade stock and the good edge geometry. If you're interested in any of the knives you see today, they will all be linked down in the description. They will be affiliate links. So if you want to help support what I do here in this channel, it helps me pay for my testing materials, I can't thank you enough. If not, no biggie. Now let's get to the next one. Next up, we have the Real Steel Perix. This is an O-stop hell design, and I like the overall aesthetics of this knife. That's what drew me to it. This one has a blue micarta, kind of like a denim micarta. They have other colors, and they also have G10 options. Nice and grippy, nice and soft and comfortable, and this thumb stud action is outstanding. This is the largest knife in this group, coming in at 7.99 inches with a 3.53 inch drop point blade of Nitro V stainless steel. You could also call that a spear point. It's pretty darn close to being a spear point. You got a nice little top swedge. I think the blade's nice and attractive looking. You got some nice usable jimping that really grips the finger nicely. You got a nice, beautiful raw stone wash finish there that's going to hide wear really well. This blade shape's going to be very versatile because you got a low tip, so that belly's going to be very gradual up to that tip. And this one came incredibly sharp out of box. Sharper than all 5 knives that you're going to see today. And this one performed the best out of all 5 knives. The Shale that y'all just saw was a very close second. And then also when it comes to the sharpening choil, they did a fantastic job. They brought the plunge grind all the way back almost. And then you have all this sharpening room to where my fingernail is before it should start to widen up on you. Now, even though you have a short flat grind here, they still managed to get it down to around 16 thousandths behind the edge at the thinnest portion. Now, that's going to thicken up rather quickly the more and more you sharpen it, but At this point, it's nice and thin, and that paired with the sharp edge allowed this thing to perform very, very well. And then being that you have that 3.53-inch blade, you got a good bit of usable blade there. Not to mention, this one is nice and streamlined, nice and slim and sleek. It carried really well. It's very lightweight because you have heavily skeletonized inset partial liners in there. And they do this wraparound thing like you see here to where the liners is one solid piece and they wrap it around. And what I like about that is, especially how softened they did it, is that it covers up this back portion right here. So whenever you're gripping the knife, it makes it way more comfortable in hand. This one, I thought, was very comfortable no matter what I did, even though it is a little bit narrow. The cardboard was a breeze. Getting the tip down into the leather that I do, that one was a breeze. And nothing really gave this one any troubles. When it comes to the action on this one, you have dual thumb studs. Beautiful action, and this one is done right. You have a crossbar lock on this one, so an ambidextrous lock, and you have an ambidextrous pocket clip, the wire pocket clip that sits all the way at the butt of the knife, and you can see the two little holes hopefully right there. They slide in there and you can swap it around rather easily. Very minimal construction, and this one's riding on bearings. And I mean, when I say snappy, this thing's so fidgety because right where your thumb lands when you pull that crossbar lock back, it just isn't in the perfect spot, at least for my hands, at least. Yeah, very, very snappy, very, very smooth. And let's touch on the strong points again. You got a versatile blade, came incredibly sharp, and performed the best out of the group. Nitro V steel, excellent jimping up top if that's your thing. Fantastic sharpening choil, nice and lightweight, easy to carry, comfortable in hand, and it's completely ambidextrous. Super smooth action, nice and snappy action. When I said nice and lightweight, these come in at 2.63 ounces. So that's well under the ounce and inch that some people care about. And as you can see, it's a little bit smaller than the Ontario Rat 1 and it's bigger than the Rat 2. It has about the same cutting edge as the Rat 1. And it's about identical to the Kaiser Towser K and the Cjrb button lock Elementum. And my only real nitpick on this knife, I think they could have given us a little bit stronger Omega springs. You know, it definitely could be a little bit stronger. Not that I'm really too concerned about it, especially carrying it in my right pocket. It's sitting up against my pants. But I wouldn't have minded it as about as strong as the previous Cjrb Shale. Now that's something I could try to tune myself by flexing the Omega springs out some, and I may do that after this video. But even with the way they are, I'm still okay with it because I like the knife that much. These come in at 68 bucks. You know, I don't know. It's a little steep, but you know, it is a collaboration with Ostapel. It's a bigger knife than all these, and it performed the best out of all these. So all that said, I can still highly recommend it. If the lighter Omega springs aren't a deal breaker for you, this, like I said, is probably my favorite knife on this list because I like a good performer. This one will also be linked down in the description. Next, we have the Remette RTB. Y'all may have seen the premium RTB that I reviewed on the channel a while back. This one also has a premium price tag because of the titanium and the M390 blade. But I like this one a good bit, and I may like the budget one even more. So instead of the tie, you have a G10 scales over stainless steel liners, and you have a 14C 2010 blade instead of the M390 steel. This is going to be a highly versatile blade because of that low tip, gradual belly. It's going to be great for doing very fine, precise work, tip stuff. In-hand cuts are going to be great as well. Should be good at all your day-to-day EDC tasks. I call this a medium-sized EDC knife at 7.07 inches long. It has a 3.05 inch. I guess you could either call it a drop or drop sheep. Sheep's foot, drop point, drop foot blade. And like I said, a 14C. One of my favorite budget steels. Do have some jimps up top. I call it moderate traction jimping. And you also have a forward somewhat. If you want to kind of creep up there, it's more of a larger sharpening choil. And you got some decent geometry on this blade. It's a little thick. This is coming in at 0.12. Like I said earlier, I wish more companies would give us 0.1 or .09 would be even better. They still managed to get this flat grind down fairly thin to around 16 thousandths behind the edge. And it came nice and sharp from factory, and it performed really, really well. Now, obviously, it's not going to hold an edge quite as long as the M390 version, but I think the performance was perfectly acceptable at the $57 price range that these go for. I thought it sliced cardboard fantastic, very slicey there. No problem sliding out of the cut. Now, I did kind of creep up a little bit, so I didn't get hung up in this area, because as you can see, you are a decent way away from that edge if you're behind on this flipper tab here. Just like I said on the premium version, I would have loved to see either this choil come into the scale more and do away with this flipper tab altogether to give you a full forward finger choil. You can keep it this compact if you want. That way you're not losing any more edge, and you got a full usable forward choil for anybody's fingers. Because with that flipper tab, I did notice, just like on the premium one, that it does make me a little bit cramped. I can still get a 4-finger grip on it, but when I'm choked back like this, it is a little cramped. Like I said, I did creep up like this a good bit, you know, kind of holding it in that trigger finger grip or around the top of it in hammer grips. Perfectly fine. Thanks to the contouring on the G10 scales, that really made it a lot more comfortable in hand. But something I also noticed in the more premium one, that is also here in the budget one, that did kind of bother me a little bit whenever I started doing the harder cuts, is the way this comes up right here. My fingers landing right there on those two humps. I don't know why they have to put that on all their knives. You could completely do away with this. Come from here all the way to back right here, or make this whole scale section come from here. Instead of dipping down right here, come all the way here and then dip right here. This, you know, you got to fit perfectly in there. And most of the time where my hands are sitting, it's sitting on top of this little piece right there. That being said, you know, for 95% of the cutting I did, it wasn't an issue at all. So it may never be an issue for you, especially if you have a medium-sized hand. So what was great about this one, it performed very, very well. I think it's an aesthetically good-looking knife. It's got contouring on the scales, so it's nice and comfortable. Like I said, as long as you don't land on this little spot. The pocket clip is excellent. It is tip-up right-hand carry only, though, but it is inset into the G10, and your screws are countersunk. Perfect amount of ramp. Goes in and out of the pocket nicely. And another great thing about this knife is the action. It's nice and smooth. You got nice and snappy break on that detent for that thumb stud action. I can also reverse flick it. And you can see how far in front of that pivot the flipper tab is. You also have some jumps. This thing, I mean, rockets out just as good as the premium one, if not better. I can also slow roll it if I want. You know, there's no action I can't do with that flipper or the thumb studs. And just like on the premium one, as you can see right here, you also have your titanium toothpick at the end of it. So do I think it's worth 57 bucks? Yeah, absolutely. You got the contour, you got great action, you got good performance on the 14C. Quick size comparison, it's a good bit smaller than the Ontario Rat 1, and it's just a hair shorter than the Ontario Rat 2. And it's just a little bit shorter than the QSP Penguin, and it's pretty close to the size of the Civivi Elementum. Nitpicks and complaints. I wish they wouldn't have done the blasted blade. I would have much rather the raw stone wash finish, just because that makes it more prone to corrosion. Even though I haven't had an issue yet, I still prefer a stone wash finish over that finish. I wish they would have either gotten rid of the flipper tab altogether, given us a little bit larger choil so you could have a full forward finger choil for pretty much anybody's fingers. And I really, really wish they would stop doing this right here. All that said, do I think it's worth 57 bucks? Yeah, I can definitely recommend this one. I had a lot of fun using this one. I carried this one a good bit. It's got great action, nice and smooth. And then if you're somebody who likes something extra in your knife, you have this titanium toothpick. Next up, we have the brand new Miguron GALATY. This is the second largest knife in this group at 7.45 inches. So it's a medium to larger size knife. I call it more medium. You have a 3.25 inch drop point blade of a 14C 20-10 steel. Excellent grippy jimping up top if that's your thing. And you do have a forward finger choil that I can fit my finger in, but if you had fat fat sausage fingers is probably just going to be one oversized sharpening choil. Because of that low tip drop point, it's easy to get the tip down on the things. If you need to do some fine, intricate cuts, you could do that. And being that you have the low tip, your belly is going to be very gradual, making it easy for in-hand cuts and also cutting on a flat cutting surface. It performed really well all the way to the end, and I think it's because this one did not come with as crisp of an edge as, say, the real steel Perix did. I'm sure once I put my own edge on it, it's going to perform a lot better. You got 0.12 inches on your blade stock thickness. You got a decent height, flat grind, and they managed to get it down to around 16 thousandths behind the edge on this one as well. And like I said, it was performing really, really well. It wasn't until when I got to the denim section, because I had done the denim portion of the testing after I did the sisal rope. And when I got to like the second or third piece of denim, I could feel this slow down like immediately. I could probably strap it back, but it's definitely not as sharp as it was whenever it started. I mean, none of them are, but this one, yeah, it definitely needs a good sharpening. This one has nice and smooth action, nice and snappy flipper, and I can get to that blade hole. It's got a nice reverse flick on it, but you can thumb flick it, you can slow roll it. If I want to, I can grab it and do the spotty drop on it. Riding on ceramic ball bearings, making it nice and smooth, along with that ceramic ball detent. This one was very comfortable in hand. It's because it's got this nice grippy micarta on it that has a nice contouring. Fills out my hand nicely. So the grade on this knife, nice versatile blade shape, excellent steel with 14C28N. It performed well. It could have performed a little better if it would have came with a little bit crisper of an edge. It has good jimping, nice snappy action, dual action. It carries well. It's very comfortable because of the contouring, and it comes with a 3D milled titanium pocket clip that functions nicely. Now it is tip upright, hand carry only. You have skeletonization in those stainless steel liners to bring down the weight. This one comes in at 3.44 ounces. Not bad at all. No issues whatsoever carrying this one. Access to the lock bar is fantastic because the show side comes down a little lower than the lock side, and you have this nice chamfer right there, so it's very comfortable for me to get my finger in there easily and comfortably. For our size comparison, as you can see, it's a good bit smaller than the Ontario Rat 1, and it's a little bit longer than the Ontario Rat 2. And it's a hair shorter than the Miguron Mayoral, and it's identical in length to the Miguron Pagos. Nitpicks, complaints on this one: the edge could have been a little better out of box. Even though it wasn't terrible, I just think it might have been a little bit over buffed. Also, there's no lefty love here. Even though I'm not a lefty, I know we do have some lefties here. So my final thoughts on the Miguron GALATY. You get a versatile drop point 14C blade that's going to perform really well. It's comfortable. Mine has nice and smooth, nice and snappy action. You got nice contouring on your scales, good access to your lock bar, carries well, and it comes with a mill tie pocket clip. For 53 bucks, I think it's an excellent deal and one I can highly recommend. And lastly, we have the Olitans G053. I gotta say, ever since I found Olitans when I was doing the Amazon Knife of the Month picks with the, can't remember, if I remember, I'll put it up here, but after I did testing on this one and saw how incredibly great it was, and how this thing only costs 54 bucks, titanium, and you have the swappable 9CR blades that sliced very well. And this thing is incredibly smooth. It comes with 3 different blades. It's like $54. What? And that's why I was so excited to check this one out. I even have the premium version of this one that's a little smaller, but it has premium steel with carbon fiber scales. I'll review that one separately. This one, I call it a medium to small knife, or medium, coming in at 6.97 inches long. It has a 3.03 inch drop point blade here of 14C20N steel. You got some jimping up top, I call it moderate traction, and it's just a very sharp road. Not something I really care about, but I know some people love their jimping. Got a nice little top swedge that thins out that tip, which is nice because you got that nice needle-like tip there. Great for doing detail stuff, and if you had to pierce, you could easily do that as well. It's got a nice satin finish on it. You can also get these coated. You can get other colored G10 options. This one has pretty much a full flat grind. It comes up, it's got a little flat right here, but not really. If you look at it, it kind of goes this way and goes into that swedge. and it's ground nice and thin. This one comes in at around 15 thousandths behind the edge, so it's sliced very, very well. It came with a good edge out of box, and I thought it performed really, really well. If I had to rank this one, I would say you got the Perix first, you got the Cjrb Shale second, and I would say that the Olitans came in third. The third, fourth, and fifth one, all those are very, very close to each other. The weight on this one's good at 2.9 ounces, and the price on this one's good at $48. So you have a slicey, versatile blade, and all the cutting I did with this one, the contouring on the G10 scales fills out my hand nicely, and it was nice and comfortable for me. Now, whenever I really started pushing down into the wood, testing the ergos, I could kind of feel the top of this pocket clip. It wasn't terrible or anything. I call it a very minor hot spot. This one has nice and smooth action. It's riding on bearings with that crossbar lock, so as soon as you pull that back, it's a free dropper. It's got a pretty well-tuned action here, so the Omega springs aren't too loose in my opinion. Now, of course, if I want to, I could flip it out, but I took a pretty good push there. You do have a sharpening choil on this one, but I can't really tell. It kind of looks like you might get a few sharpenings before it'll widen back here. It's very hard to say, but if I look right here, it looks like it starts to get wide a little. Yeah, I should have a couple sharpenings. So I'd say for the most part, ergos were good. And for my medium-sized hands, I got a nice 4-finger grip on it. You know, if you have large hands, this one might be a little small for you. This one carries really well because it has a nice deep carry pocket clip, enough ramp to go in and out of my pockets. They inset the clip into the G10 along with countersinking those screws. Very well done. You got a little small G10 backspacer with a geared pattern on it. Do have a lanyard hole for the lanyard people out there. Your G10 is pretty much like a smooth textured G10, not slippery or anything. They did a good job of knocking off any of the hard edges on the sides of the G10. Let's go over the grate. You got excellent action. You got a nice and versatile slicey blade, comfortable ergos, nice and lightweight at 2.9 ounces, and the price $48. Now for some quick size comparisons, it's a little bit smaller than the Ontario Wrap 1, and it's almost identical in length to the Civivi Elementum. And lastly, it's a hair smaller than the QSP Penguin, and it's a hair longer than the Vosteed Acorn. Now for my nitpicking complaints, I wish they would have given us a little bit more of a sharpening choil or brought that plunge all the way back so I could have all this as sharpening life. And I think the biggest miss on this one, being that you have a crossbar lock, dual thumb studs, is not having it tap for lefties. Anytime you have a crossbar lock, it doesn't make sense not to make it a completely ambidextrous knife. Even though I'm a righty, you know, I still like carrying sometimes on my left side, and you're going to exclude a part of the market for no reason whenever you already have that ambidextrous lock. All that said, if you're not a lefty and you don't mind that any of the stuff I talked about, I think it's a good performer. I think it's a good looking knife. At $48, I think this one's a no-brainer. That's going to do it for today's video. We're going to recap real quick. When it comes to performance, this is how they went. This one did a good bit better than the rest. Then it would be the Cjrb Shale. And then these two were pretty much tied. They did both really well. And I think the Miguron would have done just as good as these two if it would have had a better, crisper edge out of box. Your best bang for your money is definitely going to be the Olitans at $48, 14C, comfortable, and you got a nice crossbar lock action. If I had to pick a favorite, even though I wish they would have had a little bit stronger Mega Springs, this Real Steel Perix has got to be my favorite of the bunch. Even though I like all of them, that's just the one I seem to carry more, and I like the overall aesthetics. I like how lightweight it is. I like how comfortable it was, and I like how versatile the blade is. Like I said, if any of these interest you, they will all be linked down in the description. I hope every one of y'all is having an absolute amazing day. And remember, guys, keep those blades sharp. Smile more. Peace!